Minister, this legislation, as you know, aims to improve the accountability, or should I say introduce the accountability of senior executives in the banking, insurance and the wider financial sector, and should ultimately protect customers and even the wider economy that can suffer when the financial sector is left unregulated. This legislation, as was said, is sorely needed and well overdue. An individual accountability regime was introduced in Britain in 2016 in the form of senior managers and certification regime, and again in Australia in 2017 with the introduction of the banking executive accountability regime. And in 2017, Sinn Féin brought forward a motion to the Dáil calling for that legislation, the legislation that would ensure that individuals in financial institutions could be held to account. The proposal that provides the basis of this legislation came from the Central Bank 4 years ago, and all of these reforms were really put in motion by the experience of the global financial crisis. The financial crash in 2008 utterly destroyed public confidence in the financial sector. Indeed, it utterly destroyed this country, and we're still paying the price for it in many of the things that we talk about today, whether that be in education and health and many other aspects. The staggering lack of accountability of the financial and banking sector was laid bare, and the trust hasn't been restored to date. For comparison, days after the collapse, the Icelandic authorities designed a comprehensive policy of accountability based on two overlapping objectives: establishing the truth and punishing those responsible. An independent Truth Commission was mandated to document the causes of the meltdown, and a newly established Office of the Special Prosecutor was tasked to thoroughly investigate and to prosecute those who are responsible for any crimes committed. The Office of the Special Prosecutor then successfully prosecuted 40 bank executives. That is the standard that we should be aiming for. Fundamentally, it should be a question of trust. There should be sufficient governance, safeguards, and people should be held to account for their actions. The most effective way to manage bad behaviour and reduce bad outcomes is to have real accountability. The Senior Executive Accountability Regime has the potential to deliver greater levels of accountability, but much work needs to be done in terms of the detail. It will provide a duty of responsibility. However, I would be interested as to see why the language proposed by the Central Bank, that the executives must take all reasonable steps, has been changed to now be reasonable in the circumstances. I hope this does not represent an attempt to water down this legislation. I do welcome the management responsibility maps as a mechanism to ensure senior managers understand what is expected of them and that there's no overlaps, or more importantly, no underlaps in who is responsible for what. The legislation will also introduce a conduct of standards. As the Minister for State said yesterday, the conduct standards are unremarkable. They outline the expectations of the financial sector executives to act with honesty and integrity, due skill, care and diligence, and to cooperate with the regulator. But these are the basic standards that have too often not been adhered to. This was all too obvious in the pain and stress suffered by individuals and families during the tracker mortgage scandal. In many cases, the overcharging ran into tens of thousands of euro. In the worst cases, people lost their homes as a direct result of the bank action. And you'll remember, Minister, when I was on the Finance Committee, we had some of those people who were impacted by the tracker mortgages in before us in the committee. And indeed, it was absolutely devastating to see the way that their lives had been destroyed. And I think that's reflected somewhat in the 680 million compensation and the 270 million in fines. But there was 327 homes lost, and the time that was lost by families who suffered and the quality of life was impacted was devastating right across this state. In many cases, the overcharging ran into tens of thousands of euro. In the worst case scenarios, had people lost their homes. It's often blamed on the toxic culture in our banks and financial services sector, and that's often. Sorry, there's somebody else. Is there here to do this? Sorry, I was in it. Right. So, Minister, I welcome this. I welcome this bill. I hope it will do what it's intended to do. Thank you.